And we are back, here to talk about Dark Force Rising, Book 2 in the Thrawn Trilogy. Just a quick reminder, this is my reread of the series, though the last time I read these books, at least this trilogy, was over a decade ago, I think. And this video will contain spoilers for Heir to the Empire and this book as well. So it's probably going to be a bit longer than my review of Heir to the Empire because I kept that pretty spoiler free. And I gotta say, I absolutely love this book. I thought it was awesome. It was way better than I remembered. At least the one part of this book that I really did remember and remembered not liking, which was Leia's entire plotline. I ended up loving that in this. This was great. It was awesome. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. So her plot in this, she goes to the Noghri homeworld and basically tries to convince them to turn against the Empire who they feel indebted to. And I absolutely loved the unraveling of the history of their planet and this disaster that happened to them and the lies that are being told to them and how that affects Leia. And it also just really highlights how great she is. She's just a great character, and the sequel trilogy really didn't do anything with her, unfortunately. And I think the way they explore her use of the Force is done really well in this. It's very subtle. A lot of this is very subtle. A lot of the writing, a lot of the stuff that is shown, it's subtle. It's not over the top. It's not nostalgia porn or nostalgia bait or whatever you want to call it. Her trying to sense other people's emotions, even her using her lightsaber. I've read these books really close together, so I'm not sure if she's still on Kashyyyk in this one, or it was in the last book, where she gets attacked by the Noghri, and she busts out her lightsaber and gets to use it a couple of times. I thought that was awesome. And she uses it again at the end of her story arc on the Noghri homeworld. Basically, she's being held by the Noghri, and to display her power, she just floats her lightsaber in front of her and turns it on and keeps it there for a few minutes. It's a small thing, but it was such a big moment for me. I just felt like it was such an accomplishment for her, and it was just done really well. I loved it. You know, we don't need Obi-Wan Kenobi throwing boulders at Darth Vader. We don't need stuff like that. That's over the top. That's gratuitous. It's not necessary. And obviously that's sort of inspired by some of the stuff in the prequels, and this was not written when the prequels were a thing, and you can tell. But the way the Force is portrayed in the original trilogy, it's subtle, and it continues that trend of subtlety in the Force with these abilities. And there's still a lot of tension in her story. Again, despite we know these characters aren't just gonna die. We have this looming threat in the background of her story of Master Sabayoth wanting her twins to train as Jedi and basically shape them in his image as Dark Jedi. I would consider it as Dark Jedi. And then you have Thrawn on the Noghri homeworld investigating all this stuff that's happening that she's basically causing and trying to figure out what's going on. And there's a moment where I honestly was like, she's gonna get caught by Thrawn. There's no way. She's so lucky. She's so lucky to be alive. And something I really ended up loving is how she's paired up with Chewie. She was with him on Kashyyyk in the first book, and he's with her on this homeworld where they go with a Noghri called Kabrak, who she let live after he tried to kill her or kidnap her. I guess it was the Force telling her that's what she thinks. And the Noghri people have a lot of respect for Darth Vader, and they view her as Lady Vader, so they have a lot of respect for Leia as well. And it's through this Noghri character, Kabrak, that Thrawn is starting to be suspicious. Like, why is he not communicating with us properly? Why is he not landing his ship in the right place? Why is he doing all this weird stuff? Why did he go on this mission and then disappear for a few months? And then he just keeps asking questions, and you always feel like he's so close to figuring it out. And Leia is lucky that he just didn't. For once, he just got like the wrong idea of what was going on, but he was so close to getting Leia and Chewie, and he doesn't even know it. And then you have Han and Lando's story, which I thought was interesting, but probably the least interesting storyline in the book, at least for me. Though I do love their interactions, and they still have some great banter and great moments, despite their plot overall being a little bit average. Before they end up going on their little journey, at the start of the book, Luke and Lando are paired up, and they get to go on this little adventure on this space station really quick. That leads into Lando and Han's adventure. They're essentially trying to find Delta Force, which is this spy or this leak or this whatever information source Thrawn has within the New Republic. Which leads into the Dark Force, which is a fleet of dreadnought ships. I think it's 200 ships, and you need about 2,000 people per ship to man them. And these are meant to be Clone War era ships, so they're pretty old and they're just lost in space somewhere. And at the end of the first book, Thrawn attacks the New Republic to try and steal some ships, and he isn't quite successful, but they do a lot of damage to the New Republic, so they both could really use this Katana fleet. And towards the end of the book, it ends up being a race to get this fleet. And Lando, I love Lando. He's awesome, he's cool, he is kind of pressured or tricked or forced in a way, a non-malicious way, to help Han on his little adventure. Or I suppose the best way to say it is he's going out of his way to help Han. He doesn't need to be there, but obviously he's a good guy and a friend to Han, so he's going to help him out. And I think it was at the end of the first book where Han is reflecting on Luke and how much he's grown up and what he was like when they first met on Tatooine. And I just love that. It's just a little moment. And stuff like that is seriously missing from a lot of the Disney era stuff, the sequel trilogy especially. These little moments that really mean a lot. And the way Timothy Zahn has wrote this, you can tell that the prequel trilogy was not a thing when he wrote this. However, it almost makes those movies and that era feel like mythology or forgotten history. The prequels, the Jedi Purge, that was a galaxy-changing event, and it's sort of treated like forgotten history. And I just thought that was cool. It reminds me of a lot of stuff in A Song of Ice and Fire, a lot of the world building. There's a lot of magical implications to it, but it's all forgotten history. It's all built into the mythology. And I think it's neat to have that vibe in Star Wars. It works really well because it's more of a sci-fi fantasy. It's more of a fantasy, and the Force feels way more magical, even though if they were like, hey, midichlorians are a thing in this book, it still would feel very magical just because of how it's written. It's just so good. Timothy Zahn is so fucking talented. You know, it's almost inspirational. The writing is so well done. Sorry to glaze Timothy for a second, but it's like I kind of want to get into writing now. I want to try it out. Maybe I'll get on AO3 and make some Star Wars fanfic. And Luke is just still my favorite character in this. He gets to do some pretty cool stuff, and basically everything I wanted to see him do happens in this, or at least when it comes to Mara Jade and Sabayoth, Master Sabayoth. Luke's not an idiot, so when he meets Jorah Sabayoth, he's able to pick up pretty quickly, oh, he's crazy. He goes to R2 and he's like, this guy's mentally ill, clearly. But he doesn't want to kill him, he wants to help him, because he's reminded of his father. His father was corrupted by the dark side, but he was brought back, at least in his final moments, and Luke feels maybe he can do that for him, for Sabayoth as well, and I just thought that was really awesome. And consistent with the character of Luke that we see in Return of the Jedi. It is probably a bad idea to let him live, but it's not out of character for Luke to do that. And I'm really enjoying Mara's character and the way she's written, and how she thinks about Luke and the rebellion, or the New Republic, and the Emperor and her past and all of that. We get some more hints to that in this. And just the fact that she's kind of put in a position where she needs Luke's help to save Talon Card from Thrawn. They have to infiltrate the Chimera to break him out, and it was just so much fun. And unfortunately for my boy Talon Card, like, he's not in it as much as I would have liked, though from when Luke has to go and save him to the end of the book, he's kind of a major character in those aspects, so that's cool. Something else about the final battle that I enjoyed was the fact that Leia and Chewie were there as well as basically every other character we enjoy. And Card and Leia are actually involved in a scenario in the final battle that just felt so Star Wars to me. I could have totally seen that happening in a movie, and it would just work so well. And it was such a good moment. Leia is dope in this. And when it comes to Thrawn, and this is really going to spoil the end of this book and the end of the last book, he loses that battle, and then he kind of loses again when Luke and Mara break Card out of his imprisonment and they get away. And he says this to Pelion, he's like, we've lost a battle, but we haven't lost the war. And then Pelion is like, well, we've lost a few battles now. It's kind of feeling like we're losing. And I was really worried that this was going to go into some Rebels territory, if you've seen that animated series, where he kind of just keeps losing, but keeps acting like it's no big deal. Like, oh, I've got it all planned out, but then he just loses. And at the end of this, when they go to the fleet, they find the fleet and Card reveals, oh, I've had a little look. There's clearly only 15 here, or at least there aren't 200. And you get this reveal that, oh, by the time our heroes have got there, Thrawn had already taken most of the ships. So he had already won this little race they were on to find the fleet. And then if you remember, you need about 2,000 people to man each dreadnought. And the heroes were basically thinking, well, he definitely doesn't have the manpower. So we have time. We do have time to prepare for this fight. But when Luke and Han were on the Katana, the main dreadnought, there's some good foreshadowing. Luke keeps getting this weird feeling that the stormtroopers they're fighting, there's something up with them. And at the end of the book, it's revealed that they're all clones. So Thrawn is going to be able to just manufacture the manpower he needs. And I just thought that was a great way to end it. And another thing that I appreciate, like I said, subtlety. The original trilogy is very subtle. These books are also very subtle. 2 Star Destroyers were enough for the Rebellion or the New Republic to say, we need to get out of here. We have 3 dreadnoughts, but they have 2 Star Destroyers. That's a real threat. We can't win this. Luckily, the heroes are clever and they manage to outsmart the Star Destroyers and use some tech that was set up in the previous book to take out one of the Star Destroyers. And you just compare that to The Rise of Skywalker, where Palpatine is like lifting 500 Star Destroyers out of the ground. It's like, that is so over the top. Like, what is even going on? And the way the Force is portrayed, Luke feels like when Yoda lifted his X-Wing out of the swamp, that was an amazing feat in the Force. And you know, Luke is very skilled, but he does not consider himself a Jedi Master. He's just a Jedi Knight. Mara Jade even refers to him as a Jedi Knight in the 3rd book. And obviously part of the way the Force is portrayed is because you just hadn't seen anything like that yet until the prequels. Palpatine throwing those like senator pods or whatever you want to call them at Yoda, like that's so crazy and spectacular. It's more of a spectacle. The prequels are more of a spectacle, I think, but I don't think it's necessarily over the top. Not like Obi-Wan Kenobi throwing a bunch of boulders at Vader, or Vader just pulling a spaceship down and ripping it apart with the Force. That's a bit gratuitous. I'm not really a fan of that. There's some stuff like that in some other Legend stuff. Starkiller pulls down a Star Destroyer. That's the one that comes to mind anyway. But at least for this story, these characters, where they are at in their Jedi training, where the galaxy is at, where the Jedi in general are at, I think it works to be more subtle, more understated. Luke is mostly using his abilities to sense where people are and how they're feeling. And like in the first book, the most fantastical or spectacular thing he does with his saber is just throw it at someone and bring it back to him. But we still get some good Luke Skywalker action when he goes to save Talon Card, and in the final battle on the Katana when he's taking out these clone troopers. And Luke hears rumors of like, well, the Jedi betrayed everyone. They betrayed the galaxy, and that's why they were killed. But he also recalls being on some random planet in some random establishment, and these people are just looking to him to sort out their problem, to give a verdict on a decision, to make a decision for them because he's a Jedi. And it just adds to this forgotten history of what the Jedi were meant to be. And then you have Sabayoth, who's a clone. He's not even a real guy, though he probably does have the memories or some kind of memories of the original Sabayoth, telling Luke some other version of history and some other version of the Jedi, like where they should be ruling over people. That's what they meant to do. That's what they were meant to do. And it just gets me super excited to get back into the new Jedi Order stuff. Though when I'm done with this trilogy, I think I am going to read the Thrawn Duology, which is something that I don't remember ever reading. There were like quite a few new Jedi Order books, and I think that's what I read the most when I was younger. Plus a lot of the prequel stuff, because I kind of grew up on the prequels and I was really into that era. And there are a few other expanded universe stories that I have missed or overlooked or just didn't end up reading. So when I get to them, I'll let you know if it's my first time, and that'll be exciting. Especially the X-Wing series. I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I don't think I've ever read it. And yeah, that's kind of all I had to say. Look out for the review of The Last Command. I'll let you guys know when I'm almost finished that book. I've enjoyed doing these reviews, these 2 reviews, so I think I will keep reviewing expanded universe material. And I might do some reviews of A Song of Ice and Fire books like the main series and Fire and Blood and Out of the Seven Kingdoms. I will definitely review that show when it comes out. And like I've said many times before, if it's terrible, I am gonna lose my friggin' mind. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this book. and the EU in general? And who's your favorite EU original character? Let me know. And I don't know if this is a controversial opinion, but for me, my two favorites are probably Jason and his sister Jaina. I don't know, I always remembered really enjoying those characters and when Jason turns to the dark side. Spoilers! Alrighty, I'm Nara Dark. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys later.